Hi, my name's Victoria. I'm 27, and I guess I wasn't supposed to speak. I know that sounds dramatic. Maybe it is. But when every room you walk into suddenly feels colder, when the way people smile changes, just slightly, you start wondering if the silence they want from you isn't just about being polite. It's about staying in your place. It didn't happen all at once. There wasn't some big explosion. Just a series of glances, missed invitations, clipped responses that felt too rehearsed. And then, one night, something shifted. That was the moment I realized I was the problem they didn't want to deal with. All right, take a breath, get comfortable. This story, it's a lot. But if you're here, I think you're meant to hear it. If it hits something real, leave a like, maybe subscribe, so you don't miss where it goes next. And hey, if you were in my place, what would you have done? Seriously, I'd love to know. Drop it in the comments. The lobby of Caldwell & Crane was too clean, like it had something to hide. That kind of sterile polish that made you second-guess your own shoes. I stood there, clutching my ID badge, watching reflections shift across the marble. People in fitted suits glided past with practiced purpose, murmuring in expensive tones. It was my first day. Not just in the building, this was the start. The place I'd been fighting to get into for 3 years. Ivy League resume, 2 internships, 1 fellowship I practically bled for, and now I was here, standing beneath a chandelier that cost more than my entire student debt. I told myself I belonged. Over and over. The other new hires clustered like atoms, repelling and orbiting each other in awkward, bright-eyed spirals. 8 of us. 7 men, 1 woman, me. We were split into smaller groups for orientation. My mentor, Randall Havely, senior partner, Harvard grad, case legend, charisma like a knife wrapped in silk. He walked in like the air shifted for him. Wavy, graying hair, precision-tailored suit, the kind of voice that made people listen harder, even when he wasn't saying much. When he greeted the others, James, Noah, Eli, his face warmed. He joked, asked where they were from, what sports they watched, what they thought of last night's game. They laughed, leaned in. Then he turned to me. A pause. Microsecond too long. "Victoria," he said, offering a firm, neutral nod. "Welcome." I smiled. "Thanks. Really excited to." "Let's keep things professional," he cut in, eyes already scanning his tablet. "We've got a packed schedule." It hit like a door closing softly in your face. No explanation, no tone, just clipped efficiency. I told myself not to overthink it. But over the next few days, that pattern didn't just continue, it sharpened. While my male peers were pulled into coffee chats and sidebars, I was left with memos and red lines. No hostility, just nothing. And nothing, when repeated enough, starts to sound a lot like something. At the end of that week, I watched from across the office as Randall clapped James on the back and whispered something that made them both laugh. I'd never seen him smile like that around me. There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from absence. It comes from precision. From someone drawing the borders of what you're allowed to be. That's what it felt like working under Randall Havely. The second week blurred into the third, and I tried to tell myself it was just a matter of proving I was competent. Maybe he was wary of favoritism. Maybe he was like this with everyone, detached, careful. I kept repeating that word in my head. Careful. Then James started getting invited to client calls. I found out through Slack. Randall would say things like, "Let's loop in James on this," or, "Noah, grab a coffee and swing by my office." To me, he said, "Please review." Or, "Redraft this." Quietly. Always in writing. Always alone. The difference wasn't aggressive, it was clinical. One morning, I bumped into Rami Harris in the elevator. Another junior, always slightly smug in that business school guy who thinks he's in a TV show way. "Big day," he said, sipping a protein shake. "Randall's taking us to Koreatown after the Rothridge pitch. His treat." I blinked. "He invited you guys?" He grinned. Said he wants to build trust with his mentees, bonding and all that. The doors opened. Rami walked out whistling. I stared at the metal closing in front of me and felt something tighten in my throat. That night, I scrolled through the firm's internal chat while heating leftover takeout. A thread popped up in one of the private junior groups. K-Town BBQ was, "Didn't know Randall could be that chill." Another message read, "He actually has a dark sense of humor, wild." I didn't know that Randall. I only knew the one who called me Ms. Marlowe in front of a whiteboard and corrected me with a red pen so sharp it felt like a paper cut across the soul. Still, I kept working. Hard. I stayed late. I memorized style guides and went through deposition archives just to stay 2 steps ahead. I made sure my work had no cracks. That's when I met Layla. We'd both reached for the same carton of half and half in the break room. "You're Victoria, right?" she asked. I nodded. "And you're?" "Layla Sinclair, research team. I'm not supposed to exist unless something's gone wrong in a document." We laughed. It was honest, human. She leaned in. "Has Randall ever, actually spoken to you, like as a person?" I hesitated. "Not really. He's professional." Layla snorted. "That's his code word for invisible. Same here." And just like that, the room tilted. The line I thought was personal. Maybe it wasn't just about me. Maybe it was drawn on purpose. By the time month 2 rolled in, I had every one of Randall's email signatures memorized. Warm regards when he was pretending to be human. Best when he was annoyed. R when he didn't care. I started tracking them like weather patterns. Layla and I became quiet allies. We'd meet near the filing servers, pretending to discuss documents while really exchanging stories. What began as isolated frustration slowly took shape into a pattern. "He didn't even make eye contact," she said one afternoon, holding a highlighter like it was a weapon. I gave him a memo that saved the firm 8 hours of research. He said, "Good. Give this to Rami to expand." We started keeping a shared doc. Nothing official. Just notes, dates, behavior, tone. We added Jalen Rivera to the thread. Jalen was composed, sharp-eyed, and had the energy of someone permanently halfway between a TED Talk and a lawsuit. "I tried to suggest a clause revision in a meeting," Jalen typed. He interrupted me and asked Eli to refocus the room. Eli literally repeated my point and got praised. The entries grew. Randall didn't yell. He didn't touch. He didn't exclude us in ways that screamed. He excluded us in ways that whispered. He handed out praise like currency, and we weren't part of the economy. I started noticing how promotions were assigned. People thought the firm was a meritocracy because it marketed itself like one. But I saw the real system. Who got pulled into high-profile cases? Who got lunches? Who got to make mistakes and still be trusted? The ones who joked with Randall, who had been invited to that Koreatown dinner, who posted blurry late-night karaoke selfies with captions like, "Closing deals with legends." None of them looked like me, or Layla, or Jaylin. I should have felt angry. But mostly, I felt this low, vibrating numbness. Like I was trying to shout through a soundproof wall, like someone had placed a ceiling above me and made it out of glass so I'd keep trying. I started working longer, polishing everything until it gleamed. My files were flawless. My briefs landed in inboxes hours before deadline. I volunteered for everything, even admin tasks. And yet, Randall remained the same. No smiles, no feedback, no opportunity. That week, I found myself sitting in the firm's glass conference room, watching a junior associate present a case I'd prepped alone. He didn't mention my name once. Randall nodded approvingly. My hands were folded under the table, nails biting into my palm. Outside, it started to rain. Inside, everything stayed quiet. The letter wasn't a letter, not at first. It was a draft in a hidden Google Doc titled Lunch Menu Draft 3, buried in a folder of old spreadsheets on my personal drive. Just a blank page with a blinking cursor. For a long time, I didn't write a word. I just stared at that space, feeling the weight of everything I couldn't say at work. Layla and Jaylin encouraged me. Not pushy, just quiet reminders that what we were feeling wasn't just perception. It was structure, a machine that only worked for certain people. "It's not about one bad interaction," Layla said. "It's about a pattern so consistent it becomes policy." We decided not to file a complaint, at least not yet. We weren't aiming for accusations. We wanted acknowledgement, recognition that something subtle and corrosive was happening, that professionalism wasn't supposed to feel like exclusion. The draft became a letter. We outlined specifics: the lack of verbal engagement, the refusal to mentor, the social segmentation. We worded it carefully. No attacks, just a mirror. We believe that the current environment in Team 7A exhibits structural bias that negatively impacts professional development opportunities for female staff. We added signatures, just first names, and then nothing. We sent it anonymously through the firm's internal ethics portal. It was supposed to be confidential, neutral. The platform even gave us a receipt number. We waited. 3 days passed. On the 4th day, I got called into a meeting. Marcus Crane, the firm's managing partner, was waiting in his office with the blinds half closed and his smile fully unreadable. "Victoria," he said, gesturing to a sleek gray chair. "Have a seat." I did. "We received a communication recently," he said. Anonymous, thoughtful, though perhaps incomplete. He tapped a file. "I assume you're familiar?" I didn't answer. He leaned back. "Randall Havley has led this firm with discipline and results. He's structured. That's not misconduct. It's preference." I forced my voice steady. "Professionalism shouldn't exclude mentorship." He gave a small shrug. "Not everyone mentors the same way." I left his office feeling like I'd just been patted on the head and asked to go play somewhere quieter. Back at my desk, a note was waiting. No envelope, just a folded paper placed under my keyboard. It read, "You want a future here? Stop chasing ghosts. Be smarter." No signature, no fingerprints, just fear, dressed like advice. That night, I walked home along 6th Avenue. Glass buildings watched me in silence. Everything gleamed, and for the first time, I felt like I didn't want to belong here anymore. I wanted to change it. The invitation came folded in gold-trimmed cardstock. Caldwell and Crane Annual Partners Dinner, formal attire required. For once, it felt like a win. I'd been named as one of the standout juniors for the quarter. After weeks of silence, it was something. Recognition, visibility. Jalen texted me, "See you at the Lion's Den." I laughed, then dressed like I was going into battle. The venue was a downtown ballroom with ceilings too high and lighting too soft. Waiters floated by with champagne and things that looked like food but tasted like metaphors. Randall stood near the head table, surrounded by men in suits and women who weren't junior staff. He didn't look at me. He hadn't in days. Still, I forced myself to smile, nod, glide. Layla found me by the mirrored bar. "You look dangerous," she whispered. "Like someone with receipts." I lifted my glass. "Only the digital kind." They called us to the stage in alphabetical order. 8 names. I was 7th. My heels felt too loud crossing the parquet floor. As I stood beneath the spotlight, accepting a plaque I didn't ask for, I caught Randall's face in the audience. Blank. Not even disapproval. Just absence. And then it happened. Rami Harris stepped to the podium as the final recipient. The audience clapped. He adjusted the mic with practiced charm. "I want to thank Randall Havley," he began, grinning. "He's not just a mentor, he's a shield. Especially these days, when some people in this industry confuse leadership with popularity contests or smear campaigns." A low chuckle rippled through the crowd. "And to those trying to dismantle the culture that built this firm," he continued, locking eyes with me, "maybe think twice before biting the hand that teaches you." The applause came fast, too loud, too eager. My ears rang. The air in the room folded in on itself. I didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there, frozen in satin, while every eye tried to measure what I would do. I left before dessert. Outside, the cold hit like a slap. I walked 6 blocks in stilettos, my hands trembling. The words echoed behind my ribs. Jaylyn found me sitting on the curb near Bryant Park, mascara already gone. She didn't speak for a while. Finally, she said, "He knew about the letter." I told him. I was afraid. I stared at her. Afraid of what? She looked down. Of being where you are right now. And just like that, something cracked. Not just trust, the whole illusion. I called in sick the next morning. My voice on the phone was flat, mechanical, like I was dubbing someone else's life. No one questioned it. No one asked. 3 days. I took them all. I didn't rest. I archived. Old emails, redlined drafts, credit-swapped documents, things I hadn't noticed before or had let slide. Suddenly, they all snapped into focus like pieces of a long, bitter puzzle. I combed through Slack exports, digital receipts, calendar invites. Some were petty, back-to-back invites to meetings I was excluded from. Others felt surgical, work I'd led but been erased from in final drafts. Then I found it. Buried in a shared drive labeled Marketing Q3, someone had uploaded a pitch deck, one I'd built from scratch. The title page said, "Prepared by R. Harris." The date matched. So did the formatting. Even the color scheme I'd chosen on a Sunday afternoon with 3 open monitors and a frozen coffee beside me. My work. His name. I stared at it for 10 full minutes. I printed it. Highlighted key sections. Taped it to the back of my closet door like evidence in a case I wasn't sure anyone else believed existed. That night, I sat on the floor with my laptop open, surrounded by a growing fortress of documents. Layla texted, "Still alive?" I typed, "More than ever." A thought had been building, quiet and persistent. It pressed against my ribs now, demanding air. If the firm refused to see this as a pattern, I'd show them the pattern. If Randall wanted to be untouchable, I'd turn his methods into magnifying glass material. That's when I started labeling the files. Each folder had names, dates, instances, the unspoken architecture of the firm, laid bare in metadata and PDF timestamps. I wasn't just archiving evidence, I was building a map of everything that had been designed to make people like me disappear. And slowly, a plan took shape. Not revenge, not exposure for the sake of rage. Clarity. I wanted someone, anyone, to finally say, "This is real, this is wrong, this is not how it should be." By 2 a.m., I had 7 folders, a backup on a flash drive, and a simple thought looping in my mind like a heartbeat. If they won't let you speak in the room, build your own stage. Then burn the spotlight into their eyes. I created the account in the dark, phone screen lighting up my face like some secret altar. Username, Lex Silentia, a twist on Lex Talionis, the law of retaliation. But this wasn't about revenge. This was about being heard. No photo, no bio, just a space. My first post was simple. What happens when professionalism becomes a weapon? When leadership looks like silence, and silence looks like policy? I didn't expect much, maybe a few likes, a handful of anonymous replies. Instead, I woke up to 2,500 shares. Women in finance, tech, law, academia. People who'd been on the receiving end of that same subtle erasure. Their responses flooded the comment section. My manager hasn't said my name out loud in 2 years. I pitched the idea. He got the credit. Again. I thought I was overreacting. Now I'm not so sure. And then, "Thank you for saying it out loud." I didn't feel vindicated. I felt terrified. I started posting more. Always specific behaviors, never names. I described the mechanics, how tone can silence, how praise can be allocated like power, how being left out of a calendar invite can change the trajectory of a career. One post included a blurred screenshot of a shared doc, my pitch deck, but with the name redacted. Caption: "They'll call it a team effort until someone gets promoted." It exploded. A few days later, it showed up on Reddit. A user reposted it in a legal career forum. If you've ever felt ghosted by your own team, read this. The thread passed 5,000 comments. Someone made a reaction video. A quiet fire had started. Not loud enough to bring down towers, but enough to make glass tremble. Then the messages started. Private DMs from women across firms, some from my own. "We're seeing it too. Don't stop. I think I know who you are. I'm with you." Then, a surprise. An anonymous email from a third-year associate at Caldwell and Crane. She had screenshots, notes, Slack logs. I read her message 4 times before replying with 3 words. "I believe you." Layla sent me a voice memo that night. Her voice was shaking, but she was smiling. "This isn't just about us anymore." She was right. I wasn't whispering in empty rooms anymore. I was broadcasting from the shadows. One last post before logging off that night. You don't need to scream to be loud. Sometimes you just need a signal strong enough to carry through the noise. And somewhere behind their firewalls, I hoped the firm was starting to hear it. The firm didn't respond publicly, not at first, but internally, you could feel the shift, like the air before a summer storm. Emails became clipped. Casual chatter in the elevators evaporated. Slack channels went silent, then disappeared altogether. Someone was scrubbing the tracks. Then came the memo. Not addressed to anyone specifically, but everyone knew. "We are aware of recent online discourse and are conducting a confidential review of team dynamics and mentorship culture. We remain committed to fostering a respectful workplace." It was damage control dressed as transparency. Randall kept his posture. He still walked into rooms like he owned the oxygen. Still carried his leather folio like a weapon no one else had the clearance to touch. But something was different. People weren't laughing quite as easily at his jokes. They glanced sideways when he entered. They were waiting to see which way the wind would turn. And then the pressure built. 2 more women submitted statements to the internal ethics team, citing similar patterns: erasure, exclusion, imbalance. One of them, a quiet tax associate named Mia, mentioned a series of side conversations where Randall referred to women as high-risk mentorships. The term hit like an accusation. I compiled it all, my evidence, their statements, the screenshots, and sent it through the firm's anonymous tip line again. But this time, I copied an external watchdog org on the email. Then I sat back and waited. That Friday, Randall was called into a meeting with Crane and HR. People speculated. His assistant looked pale. He came back red-faced and silent. For once, he looked like the one being measured. Layla messaged me one line. "He's rattled." That weekend, I posted something different. No redactions, no metaphors, just a caption. "Ever built something from the pieces they left you? Watch." And beneath it, I attached a blurred image of my original pitch, side by side with the one that had been falsely attributed. The post went viral in less than an hour. A legal podcast featured the story under the title, "When Silence Becomes Strategy." The host quoted the caption, then added, "If this is true, and the source seems credible, it could shake more than one corner office." By Monday, the firm had no choice. They announced a full internal audit into mentorship equity. Randall was reassigned to a client-only role. Rami stopped showing up to work. Jaylyn submitted her resignation. A new rumor floated through the halls. Someone had forwarded Lex Silentia's blog to a journalist. When I opened my inbox that night, a message sat at the top. Subject: Inquiry. Anonymous source. Inside: "We believe your voice matters. Would you be willing to talk, even off the record? Justice Ledger." I stared at the screen for a long time, not because I was afraid, because I was ready. The email sat in my drafts for a full day. I wrote and rewrote the response to Justice Ledger, wondering how much of me I was willing to put on the line. They offered confidentiality, voice distortion, pseudonym. But I knew what that would mean: another blurred face. Another woman rendered anonymous to be tolerated. No, that wasn't what this had been about. So I clicked send and typed, "Let's do it on record. My name is Victoria Marlowe." 2 days later, we filmed. Not in some flashy studio, just a neutral office downtown, rented for the hour. The camera lens stared at me like a silent jury. The producer adjusted the mic twice. I could hear my own pulse in the silence before the first question. Then the journalist looked up from her notes and said simply, "Tell me what you saw." And I did. Everything. I told her about the praise I never heard, the meetings I was never invited to, the pitch stolen and reassigned, the joke made on stage that turned me into a warning sign, the folded note under my keyboard, the message that said, "Be smarter." I spoke slowly. Not for effect, but because I wanted every word to land clean. When we finished, she didn't ask a follow-up. She just said, "Thank you," and stopped the recording. The video went live 2 days later under the title, "I Was Told to Be Quiet." Here's what happened when I spoke. In the first hour, it passed 200,000 views, then 1 million. I didn't go to work that day. I sat at home, legs crossed on the carpet, refreshing the comments. She's telling the story we're not allowed to write in emails. I've lived this. Different city, same silence. She said what most of us were afraid to even think. The firm issued a second statement, colder than the first. While we dispute many of the claims made by Ms. Marlowe, we take concerns seriously and continue to review our internal culture and mentorship practices. But no one was reading their statements. They were watching my face. By Friday, I received a call from the university where I once lectured as a guest alum. They wanted me to speak, formally, publicly, on ethics in the legal profession. By the weekend, the Lex Silentia blog had transformed. It was no longer anonymous. My name was on the homepage. The banner read, "Silence is a policy. Speaking is a choice." That night, as I stood in front of a crowd at a live Q&A, a woman from the back raised her hand and asked, "Do you regret saying your name out loud?" I smiled, slow and steady. "No," I said. "Now they finally have to say it too." 1 year later, I stood in front of a different glass building, not Caldwell and Crane. This one had no mahogany lobbies, no echoing silence, no curated smiles. Just open floors, whiteboards scarred by ideas, and people who spoke like their voices mattered. I was now the director of Equitable Practice Initiative, a nonprofit I helped co-found after the interview. We provided legal advocacy for women navigating workplace discrimination in high-intensity fields: law, finance, tech. The places where silence was treated like survival. And we were growing, fast. Sometimes it still hit me like a glitch in the system. That this started with a doc named Lunch Menu Draft 3. That I had once stood frozen under ballroom lights, wondering if I'd just ended my career. Now I spoke on stages. I taught a seminar called Ethics Beyond Policy at Columbia. I helped rewrite mentorship frameworks for firms that used to blacklist the word bias. People kept asking if I'd forgiven Randall. I always gave the same answer. I didn't do this for him. I did it for the ones who haven't spoken yet. The inbox at Lex Silentia never stopped. Every day new stories poured in, sometimes raw, sometimes beautifully articulated, always familiar. One message stayed with me. "I'm in my second year at a firm like yours. Last week I was left off a call that I built, but your story gave me the language to name it. I used your playbook. Thank you for existing." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. This was no longer just about me. That afternoon, I passed by the old building, Caldwell and Crane. Same polished walls, same impossible chandelier. But now it didn't own me. I stood across the street, watching suits pass through its rotating doors like figures on a loop. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for it. Still repeating itself. Still calling structure what was really just fear, layered in marble. Then I looked down at the email glowing on my phone. Subject: Keynote Confirmation, TED Women 2026. And I smiled. Because when I spoke on that stage, I wouldn't be asking permission. I'd be opening the door for every woman still waiting on the other side of the glass. And this time, she wouldn't be walking alone.